When I started looking into this idea of an education journey that's, well, completely not typical, it really jumped out at me. So today, we're diving into the world of Michael J. Fox, specifically through his book, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Future. And our mission really is to pull out those surprising bits of wisdom, the real nuggets from his life. Not just school, but, Hollywood, health battles, all of it. How did those experiences teach him things maybe a classroom couldn't?
Exactly. And it makes you ask that big question, doesn't it? What is an education anyway?
Yeah.
How do we get well-informed? We're going to look at how his very unique path might actually give us some shortcuts to understanding bigger things, resilience, purpose, finding joy when things get tough.
Okay, so let's start unpacking that. Fox kicks things off with a really profound question right away. What constitutes an education? And it's fascinating because here's this hugely celebrated guy, right? But he started as a high school dropout. Later, he gets all these honorary doctorates, and he jokes about it, comparing himself to the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. Puts him on equal academic footing, he says.
Yeah, and that's such a great starting point because he realized early on that his, quote, schooling wasn't getting in the way of his education. This whole idea of life 101, learning things because life just throws them at you, that really sets the tone.
He is careful, though. He's not saying, hey, everyone, drop out. He definitely sees the value in higher education. But he does list off some pretty famous dropouts like DiCaprio, Carey, Branson, Ford, even Einstein for a bit, technically. And he had this running joke on Spin City, right? Wearing T-shirts from the Ivy League schools his writers went to, asking them for coffee. A bit of fun poking.
It does raise that question, though, doesn't it? In today's world, super competitive, where's the line between being book smart and having other kinds of smarts? Fox seems to suggest that, yeah, formal education gives you structure, which is good, but some life lessons, you can't avoid them. And maybe learning them in a classroom is, well, less painful sometimes.
So Michael J. Fox might have skipped Chem 101, but he says he didn't miss any lessons. He admits he struggled with the absolutes in school, math, chemistry, failing grades, but drama, creative stuff. He excelled there. So what happens when life itself becomes the teacher? Especially when he bolts to L.A. at 18.
Right, and you can totally see how those first years in L.A. became his, intense undergraduate experience. It really did mirror college life. Parties, crazy workloads, no time, too much time, always scrambling for money.
Yeah.
And his description of the teenage brain being under construction, all amygdala-driven, that explains why he just sort of blithely skipped off to uncertain futures.
Okay, let's get into some specifics. His coursework, starting with economics. This is hilarious. He talks about learning supply and demand because he was a starving actor. Zero demand for him.
Oh, right.
And trickle down. He learned that as you're pissing your money away before it even gets to you.
Oh.
He had this paper monster cupboard overflowing with bills. Realized even earning $4,000 one month, he was still $25 in the red after basics.
Oh, what?
Yeah. And he had to sell his sectional sofa, piece by piece, to make rent. Now, that is an economics lesson.
You won't forget that one, will you?
Yeah.
And it really shows how these, abstract concepts become incredibly real when it's about survival. That's not just textbook theory. It's visceral. It's knowing the bottom line because you have to. And being Canadian, he couldn't legally take other jobs, just acting. So it forced the issue. He puts it as working his ass off to earn the privilege of working his ass off until family ties finally hit.
But it wasn't all just about money, right? His education touched on stories, ideas, too. Which brings us to comparative literature. He nearly got deported once, trying to get back into the U.S. Why? His Beverly Hills library card.
Get out.
Really?
Yeah.
Full of books he'd checked out, mostly Stephen King. His girlfriend at the time was into Thomas Hardy, and it totally blew his cover story of just being a tourist. And then he does this fun comparison, book versus movie, The Godfather, Jaws. He gives those to the films.
Okay.
2001. A Space Odyssey. Definitely the book.
Yeah.
He even points out the HAL acronym, how HAL comes before IBM. And Fight Club, he calls that one a technical draw.
That library card story is great. It shows how these little personal details can connect to bigger learning moments. And the book versus movie thing, it shows he appreciates different ways of telling a story, right? The novelist's deep dive versus the director's immediate visuals and gut punch performances.
Okay, next up, physics. Fox says he actually liked physics because it was completely indifferent to his feelings. Lessons were simple. Don't stand under a falling brick. Don't piss into the wind. Practical stuff.
Oh, true enough.
He learned about weight transference, not from some textbook formula, but from playing hockey and getting slammed by bigger guys.
Yeah.
Internalizing the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
And that really speaks to how we learn things sometimes, doesn't it? It's not just thinking about it. It's feeling it in your body. Physical learning. It gets etched in differently, maybe through discomfort, but it sticks. Like when he filmed Back to the Future, working those insane 18, 20-hour days, he called it functioning dementia. Yeah, where reality just blurred. He felt like he was literally in two places at once. And the hoverboard, all those hours dangling from cranes just proved it didn't actually work. It was a joke from the director, Bob Zemeckis, that got way out of hand. Kids were calling Mattel.
And his wife, Tracy, she even used Newton's first law inertia to describe him. Either the laziest guy or the busiest needs an outside force to change his state. And then he connects it really profoundly to his Parkinson's. He calls the diagnosis the force that kind of arrested the chaotic energy of his younger self.
That's powerful.
Moving on, his education also covered political science. Apparently, he got interested way back in junior high, volunteering as a vote counter. Fast forward, he describes standing freezing on the National Mall for Obama's 2009 inauguration. Why? Because Obama had promised to lift the Bush-era restrictions on stem cell research, something Fox had fought hard for.
And what's interesting there is how clearly he sees the mechanics of politics, like wedge issues. These super divisive topics, right? Politicians can use them maybe without even personally caring that much, just to energize their base and draw lines in the sand.
Right.
He also pushes back on the idea that young people are apathetic, so it's more about how they're polled. And he actually became a U.S. citizen later in life, specifically so he could vote in the country where his kids were born. He urges everyone, flex that democratic muscle, locally too, not just the big elections.
Then there's geography. His dad used to say, wherever you go, there you are. Fox thought it was just dad speak. Until he added his own twist, wherever you go, there it is. Meaning, the place won't change for you, you have to adapt. He learned this really vividly filming casualties of war in Thailand. Nature just kept taking back the set they built. He describes this giant scarab beetle, like Volkswagen size, crawling up the director Brian De Palma's arm.
Whoa. That really hammers home the idea of place having its own power, right? You can't just impose your will on it entirely.
Yeah.
And his story about falling off a cliff in Mexico, shirtless, more worried about spilling his beer than the huge gash he got.
Yeah. Which he then potterized with tequila and sun. Classic.
It underscores his point about travel, doesn't it? Embrace the excitement of the strange. Don't just look for home somewhere else. Adapt.
So, with all this unconventional learning, who are the mentors? Fox says the best influences just keep you connected to the world. He credits his junior high drama teacher, Ross Jones, for always asking, why not? That really sparked his questioning nature.
That's a key, isn't it?
Yeah. And his Nana, the family psychic, gave him wiggle room. Just by believing in him unconditionally. Even his brother Steve, just by being a solid guy, was a mentor without trying.
And that's such an important take on mentorship. It's not always about direct advice. Sometimes it's just creating space for someone to figure things out themselves, to draw your own conclusions. His bond with Gary David Goldberg, who created Family Ties, that's a perfect example.
Absolutely.
Gary really went to bat for him. The network wasn't sure, the famous line, I just can't see this kid's face on a lunchbox.
Right. Brennan Tartikoff said that.
Exactly. But Gary saw something. Turned this kid with zero comedy experience into a huge star through what Fox calls comedy college.
They were this unlikely pair, right? Both jumped worlds from pretty humble beginnings to Hollywood success, and Fox always emphasizes their shared sense of gratitude. Gary took another massive gamble, letting Fox do Back to the Future, even though he was still tied to Family Ties. That was huge.
Huge risk for the show.
Totally. And even years later on Spin City, when things got tense professionally, that underlying affection and respect, that gratitude, it kept their relationship strong. Fox says he still learns from Gary, who apparently bends time in retirement. It really lives up to that advice. Whatever it is they teach you, pass it on.
Beautifully put.
But life isn't all successes and mentors. Fox talks about life having explosions or moments where you just skid sideways. He actually calls catastrophe the gateway to the good stuff, which is quite a statement. His first big one was his father's unexpected death. He calls that graduate school for the soul.
And then barely a year later, when he was just 30, came the Parkinson's diagnosis. That was his explosion. Doctors told him he probably only had 10 years left of working. Can you imagine?
Devastating.
Yeah. Led straight into denial, isolation, drinking too much to cope, which just created more problems, these toxic side effects.
Hmm.
And this is where his whole idea about control comes through so strongly. It's an illusion, he says. It's illusory.
Mm.
Every involuntary movement was his constant physical reminder. He wasn't calling the shots.
And he pushes back against words like battler or struggle. He says the only path to actually win, meaning find a happy life, was to surrender. Starting with admitting he was powerless over alcohol, he has this formula: my happiness grows in direct proportion to my acceptance and in inverse proportion to my expectation. That idea of acceptance, it sounds simple, but living it must be incredibly hard. What's your take on how that actually works?
Well, it's definitely not passive, right?
Yeah.
It's not just giving up. It's acknowledging the absolute reality, as he puts it. It's about going through those classic stages: denial, anger, bargaining, all of that, and getting to acceptance. And for him, that acceptance led to action. Really powerful choices.
Like what?
Learning everything about Parkinson's, getting physically healthier, mending relationships, having more kids, realizing, okay, maybe the film career isn't sustainable like before, so let's pivot back to TV with Spin City, be closer to family in New York. It's about finding peace within the reality, not fighting against it endlessly.
Which eventually led him to go public with his diagnosis. And the response was this huge flood of goodwill. That spurred the creation of the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research, which has done incredible work, funded almost $200 million in research in its first decade alone, really changing how scientists approach finding cures.
Yeah, pioneering.
And he calls Parkinson's a gift. A tough one, sure, the gift that keeps on taking, he adds, but still a gift in how it refocused his life.
It's an amazing example of turning something incredibly difficult into something with massive positive impact.
Oh.
That story about him being in Bhutan filming a documentary on optimism,
Yeah,
it's almost unbelievable.
tell me about that.
His Parkinson's symptoms actually diminished significantly while he was there, surrounded by this completely different culture and environment.
Wow.
Yeah. And even though he had a bad fall on the trip sober this time,
Mm.
and nearly lost a finger because of his wedding ring on the way home,
Yeah.
the core lessons stuck. The power of just being present.
He makes a point of not taking photos often because he feels it pulls him out of the actual experience. He really urges you to grab on to the cardinal importance of this moment right now. The present is all you really have. He quotes the saying from recovering alcoholics: if you have one foot in yesterday and one foot in tomorrow, you're pissing all over today. He seems to have found real freedom in just accepting it just is what it is.
Yeah. Liberation, really.
So we've gone through this incredible, unconventional education of Michael J. Fox. It shows you, doesn't it, that learning never really stops, and life definitely doesn't move in a straight line. There are always detours. His ambition got him to Hollywood, sure, but it feels like his curiosity, especially after his diagnosis, is what saved his ass and led to something even bigger, like the foundation.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive just shows that real wisdom, profound understanding, it often comes from places you least expect, through challenges you never saw coming. And Fox reminds us, yeah, you're responsible for your own happiness, but it's also okay, maybe even essential, to feel responsible for someone else's too.
And that final thought he leaves us with, it's not advice, he says, just looking back at his own life. It's simply live to learn. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if you really embraced that curiosity, accepted reality, stayed present? How could that change your own unique education?